Welcome back to the Center Square Daily. I'm your host, Greg Bishop. Now let's get Illinois in focus, where Illinois officials are being sued for explicitly elevating race as a primary purpose in drawing legislative boundaries. To join us with the latest in this is Jeanne Ives, an Illinois resident, and J. Christian Adams, President and General Counsel of Public Interest Legal Foundation. Now, we spent a good amount of time already talking about all the different map issues across the country in Louisiana, stemming from the Supreme Court decision to problems that may be arising in Tennessee with lawsuits there that are being filed by groups like the NAACP. But Jeanne, if you could start off by telling us what your challenge against Illinois' maps are all about.
Well, the 2011 Voting Rights Act of Illinois specifically says that you can build districts around racial coalitions, racial influence districts. And in fact, the Democrats have done this. And they brazenly tell you that they've done this. In fact, after the new maps were signed into law by J.B. Pritzker, he said, look, these maps preserve minority representation. And in minority representation, he means racial minority representation. Even the legacy media, the WTTW, reported that specifically that the first, second, and third districts are designed to yield Black representatives despite a decrease in Illinois' Black population, and that they created a second district that props up the growing Latino population, and that the fourth district has always represented Latinos specifically, and it was designed for that purpose since the 1990s. And so it's very obvious to anybody looking at Illinois maps and Illinois law that these districts are, in fact, they use race to design the districts, and the SCOTUS decision makes it abundantly clear that you just can't do that anymore.
And from the legal aspect here, Christian, if you could just kind of give us some of the high points. What does this challenge by Jeanne do to ultimately, what's the remedy you guys are looking for?
Well, look, the remedy is to not have explicit racial redistricting criteria. You can still draw districts in the country that have racial outcomes. The Calais decision didn't change that. If there's a remedial district under the Voting Rights Act, the Federal Voting Rights Act, you might have to draw a racial district. So racial districts aren't per se illegal. What is illegal is having state redistricting criteria that is established ahead of time that says you have to create these racial districts. It's illegal to have a governor say that one of the issues you have to do is consider race when you do line drawing. You can use race to do line drawing if a court orders it or if it violates the Voting Rights Act not to do it. But that's what the Supreme Court said. But in Illinois, it's a completely different animal, where ahead of time they say you have to use race to get started. I mean, we're challenging the maps in California for the same reason at the Public Interest Legal Foundation. They're using racial criteria to design the maps in the California congressional districts. You can't do that. It's illegal under the 15th Amendment.
So with that being the issue here, of course, this is in the district court at this point. The U.S. Supreme Court ruling was just a handful of days ago, and sending reverberations across the country. But when this ultimately gets through the courts, whatever preliminary grounds there may be, what are you guys looking for? Just to slap on the wrist or redraw the maps, or what really is going to be the ultimate outcome you guys are seeking?
There's something in between a slap on the wrist, which we're not seeking, and redrawing the maps, and that is striking down the explicit racial criteria. Remember, the racial criteria in Illinois is affecting every level of government: school board, county supervisors. There's nothing that is immune from the racial criteria. So the most important thing that can be done is to throw out the racial criteria that is dictating all allocation of power in Illinois.
Well,
Jeanne,
I'd like to point out too, Greg, that honestly, there's districts like the 14th district, which is represented by Lauren Underwood, which is 63% white, 20% Hispanic, and only 9% Black. And she is a Black woman representing that district and has been doing that for quite some years now. And, for her to come in and say after this decision on the Louisiana case that this is a Republican assault on Black voters, Black representation, and the will of Congress. It's just absolute nonsense.
Well, Jeannie, you were once in the legislature, and surely you still pay pretty close attention to what the legislature's doing. What are your thoughts on that ramp up? They were getting ready to get a proposed constitutional amendment on the ballot. The House passed that, and then the Supreme Court had their ruling, and then the Senate's like, oh, can't do it. So what does that say to you about at least their recognition at this point of what the Supreme Court decision means for a state like Illinois?
Well, I hope it means that we have a very quick decision here, maybe a summary judgment on the case and some sort of settlement or whatnot, saying, yeah, we need to rewrite our 2011 VRA because it blatantly uses race as one of the criteria. And I think that they know that, the writing's on the wall. Listen, the state had to capitulate earlier when they were sued by another entity over their minority teaching scholarships that literally said whites need not apply. So, I mean, they backed away from that immediately. I'm hopeful that they back away from this immediately, realize, look, we got caught and we need to redo this entire piece of legislation. But HJRCA 28 did get stopped cold with the SCOTUS decision. And in that case, the Democrats here are so brazen as to want to even elevate race as a higher criteria than even having contiguous districts when drawing maps. I mean, this is just insane. This is how everything in the state legislature is race-based. They are race baiters themselves. The Safety Act was passed by the Black Caucus. I mean, I could go on and on. The race-based education funding formula at the higher education. That, I mean, there's so many examples that everything in Illinois is determined on race. And quite frankly, we're sick of it. It's just not constitutional at all.
We're talking with Jeanne Ives, an Illinois resident and an attorney for the General Counsel of the Public Interest Legal Foundation, J. Christian Adams. I do want to flash really quick just a picture of Illinois' congressional districts, which I think gives a little bit of an idea to people who don't live in Illinois. And you can see there looks like there's a snake, a curled finger, maybe what some might see as like a witch face, or I don't know. That's Illinois' maps for congressional districts. Now let's take a look at Iowa's maps for congressional districts. It's much more uniform. Looks like it wraps entire counties and keeps them together. You can see a lot of straight lines. And I don't know, as a voter, that might seem kind of, hey, that's a simple map here. Jeannie, as somebody who's in the legislature and involved politically, how do you make sense of these two different states? They're neighbors, but their lines are wildly different.
Well, we have that large concentration in Chicago and also the liberal suburbs that just basically control all aspects of legislation, and we just can't get past that. And so Pritzker went into 2018 promising an independent commission to draw the maps. He comes out of the 2020 census with the most partisan map drawing that literally split precincts, split like, for example, State Rep Chris Miller's district between his home and the rest of his property. So he had to move into another district to maintain his representation there. I mean, they were nefarious in what they tried to do to Republicans, cutting them in, cutting them out. They cut me out of the 6th district by 3 blocks. So I'm in the gerrymandered 3rd congressional district, which was built for Hispanic and is in fact represented by Hispanic. This is what they do. Again, it's all race all the time down there. So I'm not surprised. It's time for them actually to be put out of office over this.
I did reach out to the governor's office, have yet to hear back. I did also reach out to the Illinois State Board of Elections for their response, and they said that as per their protocol, they don't comment on pending litigation. To Christian, you said you got this case in California. You've got this case now in Illinois. Is it just Democrat-controlled states that have these types of problems, or are Republican states just kind of like, yeah, we don't want to racially gerrymander?
Yeah, I mean, look at North Carolina, a little like the map of Iowa. They have something called a whole county rule in North Carolina, where you have to try to preserve counties, much less breaking up precincts like they apparently do in Illinois. Is it a blue state problem? To some extent, yes, because they passed state Voting Rights Act laws. Washington, Illinois, Virginia, Michigan, Oregon, New York. They've passed these mini Voting Rights Act laws like the federal voting rights, but they go further. They racialize the political process. And that's exactly what Illinois did when they passed their state voting rights laws. So this was a deliberate effort over the last 15 years to create state laws that use race to allocate power. And Illinois is one of the most brazen, and that's why they're the first to get sued.
When is the first hearing in this case? You guys just filed this, what, Friday?
Yeah, it's going to be a tick because they get a chance to answer. And so it's not like it's next week. It'll be, they have 3 weeks to answer. So we're looking at, not in the month of May.
We'll definitely be wanting to get an update on that. Jeanne Ives, an Illinois resident, suing the state and being represented by General Counsel of the Public Interest Legal Foundation, Christian Adams. Thank you both for being here for the Center Square Daily.